hello, my creative friend. And yes, you are creative, whether you identify as such or not. Every single one of us is creative. And when I say creative, I'm not talking about the kind of creative that an art teacher would emphasize in somebody with a very vivid imagination and technical skill at drawing or painting. When I say creative, I mean capable of creating what you want to create. So, yeah, not everyone wants to create drawings or paintings or sculptures or junk journals or collages or handmade clothing or jewelry or whatever it is that might be your thing or somebody else's. Sometimes what a person wants to create is a life for themselves, a particular path, a particular style of self expression. Maybe it's in writing or speaking or the way that you dress or the way that you decorate your place. But whatever it might be, you have created the reality that you are living, and therefore you are creative. So, yeah, I don't know who needed to hear that. Probably most people who click on this video know that they're creative, and that's why they want to watch me draw or listen to me babble as they draw with me. Hopefully somebody watching this is drawing with me. And if that somebody is you, please do leave a comment and let me know what it is that you're drawing. If you're doing something abstract and non-representational and spontaneous in the flow, kind of like I am, I would love to hear about it. If you're doing something else representational, I would love to hear about it. But yeah, anyway, back to the point. What I wanted to talk about today is being an artist, what it means to me to be an artist, and how my perspective on being an artist has shifted from the time when I was a little kid and would tell everybody that when I grow up, I'm going to be an artist, versus now that I have grown up and sometimes feel reluctant to identify myself as such, and why. So yeah, I think we can all agree that in the Western culture in which I live, you probably do too, or at least you're familiar with it enough to be watching an English spoken video. In our culture, which is a capitalist economy culture, we tend to value ourselves based on financial affluence. So whoever makes the most money is the most successful. And as a result of that, I find my reluctance to call myself an artist stems from the fact that I've never really made a living exclusively from art. I've had to make a living doing more like crafty things, being an artisan, which is a little bit different than an artist. An artist is someone, I think, in my estimation, I'm going to give definitions to these two words that none of you have tuned in to hear defined, but I feel like it's important to lay this as the groundwork. I feel like an artist is a creative person who primarily does painting or drawing or watercolor or sculpture or mixed media art, but in a format that is perceived by most as being art. Things that you would see in a gallery, things that you would go out of your way to stop and look at and admire without wondering to yourself, is this art? It's like you see it, you know that it's art. Whereas an artisan is someone who is just as talented and creative as an artist, but who makes useful objects in an artistic way. So, for example, a jewelry maker who doesn't just make things that somebody else designs and tells them how to make, but who makes up their own designs. A fashion designer who makes clothing. Somebody who makes pottery, cups, saucers, teapots, whatever they might be. That's an artisan. So I have found it's easier to make a living as an artisan than as an artist. selling junk journals that I make. And of course, there is art involved. It is artistic, and some people would even say it is art. And yet, to me, it feels like it's something different because it's something useful and meant to become something different to the person who will own it, whoever buys it. And how I define an artist and how I define an artisan has a lot to do with the reluctance I feel when somebody asks me, what do I do? I feel reluctant to tell them I'm an artist. Instead, I feel like saying I'm a professional crafter. I make journals, I make jewelry, I sell those on Etsy. And so I've been thinking a lot lately. And I think Bashar has gotten into my head again. I'm not sure if you've seen Bashar's videos, if you're familiar with Daryl Anka. Let me give you a little brief explanation if you're curious. So Bashar is the name of a channeled extraterrestrial being who speaks through a man called Daryl Anka from California. And whether or not you believe in extraterrestrials and channeled entities, you have to agree that a lot of what this Bashar says is fascinating and helpful. Well, you don't have to agree. You're welcome to disagree. Free thinking, open debate is always welcome on my channel. I don't want to tell anybody what they have to believe, but I do believe in Bashar. I've always believed in ET stuff. I think I might do another Draw With Me video where I talk specifically about my extraterrestrial experiences. That could be fun for another day. But for today, I just want to talk a little bit about Bashar because he has influenced my return to the Draw With Me style videos. Bashar has one piece of advice that's kind of like his universal cure-all advice for anyone who ever listens to him speak. And that advice is follow your highest excitement and always do the thing that excites you the most. I feel like identity has so much to do with our highest excitement and whether or not we think we have the right to pursue it. So, for example, there have been times when my highest excitement has been meditating with crystals, working with crystals, experimenting with different gemstone combinations, and feeling how that influences me spiritually. And at those times, I feel like I was the most passionate about making my gemstone jewelry and listing it in Etsy. And I enjoyed, I wouldn't say massive success. I never had one of those Etsy shops that had multiple sales every day, generating thousands of dollars every month. But I made enough doing that to pay my rent and to pay my groceries and to buy cat food and cat litter. And so that worked for me. And I can say that by following my highest excitement, I was able to support myself. And there have been times when reading tarot cards has been the most exciting thing that I'm the most passionate about. And at those times, giving tarot readings was quite lucrative. I was able to support myself as a tarot reader. So lately, whenever I sit down to think about my life and what I really want to do and how I really want to present myself in the world, more than just how I want to present myself in the world, because I think that has to do with the external gaze, how other people see me. And I'm not necessarily the type who wants everything I do to be performative, meant for other people to consume. But how do I want to spend my time? What do I want to do? And I hope that by my sharing this about myself, it's also hopefully inspiring you to ask yourself that same question. Like, what do you really want to do most? How do you want to spend your time? How do you want to identify yourself? Like, what is your highest excitement? Because for me, when I stopped to contemplate what drives me, what's my highest excitement, what what thrills me the most about being myself alive in this world now, it's art. It's always been art. Specifically, this style of non-representational abstract art. Sometimes it's drawing, sometimes it's painting with watercolor paint, sometimes it's acrylic or oil paint, but it always comes back for me to drawing, to making art, to creating something on the visual plane that even I don't know what it's going to be until it's finished. So yeah, the way I do these drawings, if you couldn't tell already, is that I get my paper, I get my pen, I sit down, I go into a bit of a meditative state, and then I just let whatever wants to come through come through. So there's no planning the composition. There's no thinking in advance of how I want the lines to be or how busy I want it or how full I want the page to come out. It's truly spontaneous. And for me, that's the most exciting kind of art, because when something is pre-planned, we can get really critical of ourselves if the execution doesn't match the plan. Like if you have an idea in your head of what you want your art to be, and then you sit down to make it, your technical skills are going to have a lot to do with whether or not you're happy with how your work of art comes out. And sometimes mistakes happen. And if you feel like you've wasted your time and your effort on a drawing because of a so-called mistake, because it doesn't look good, that perfectionism, that striving to produce a set thing can really lead to burnout and feelings of failure, and then procrastination where you just don't feel like drawing or making art anymore. And that can lead to an inertia that lasts for years. I know I felt that way when I was in art school. So yeah, back to the topic of creating art and what it is to be an artist. For me, I'm choosing to go past society's typical definition of an artist as someone who makes a living doing their art, and instead to define artist for myself as someone who prioritizes making art. And I think that definition of an artist is something that I am going to hold on to forever and remind myself of anytime somebody asks me what I do. Because, when somebody asks you, what do you do? What they're typically asking is not what's your highest excitement, what drives you, what inspires you, what do you choose to do when you have time to do anything. What they're typically asking is, what do you do for a living? How do you get your money? What is your income source? If people asked it like that, how much more invasive would it sound? Imagine you're meeting somebody for the first time at a dinner party, and they sit next to you, they trap you in a little conversation, and they ask, so, how do you earn money to support yourself in this world that requires payment for living? That would be so much more honest. But no, instead people ask, what do you do? And I think from now on, when people ask me that, as far as being honest with myself, being honest with others, being honest about what I want my reality to be, not necessarily what my reality is, I will answer, I'm an artist. And I invite you to do the same thing. Not to say that you're an artist unless that's also what you want to be above all else, but think, what is it that you want to be? What is it that inspires you and drives you? What is, as Bashar would say, your highest excitement? And do a little bit of that. It doesn't matter what your day job is. It doesn't matter what you do for a living to support yourself in this world that requires money. What matters is, how do you choose to spend your time when you have free time, when you have options? Oh. Oreo, my cat, has climbed into my lap and she's purring. I'm sure you can hear that. There's a little positive cat purr frequency entering the voiceover. But yeah, if you can do a little bit about what it is that inspires you at least once a week. Not like every single day. If you want to be a singer, every single day you have to sit and sing and sing and sing and practice. But, spend some time, write some lyrics, play with your voice, see how it sounds when you sing those lyrics. And if somebody asks you, so what do? You can say, I'm a singer-songwriter. And it's not a lie. It's literally the truth if you write even just one line and play around with singing it. If somebody asks, what do? And you've always dreamed of publishing books, being a writer, being an author, if you write just one thing, it can be one chapter, it can be a pitch, it can be an author's bio or anything. Just get started. Just do something. If someone asks, what do? You can say, I write. And I feel like if I were in this hypothetical dinner party situation where somebody asked me what I do, and I'm sure it'll come up. There will be a time when somebody asks me that small talk, get to know each other kind of a question. I'll say, are you asking how I make money? Or are you asking what inspires me in life and how I choose to spend my time creatively? Because I think that could illustrate the ridiculousness of the question. Like, now that I think about it, I'm very likely somewhere on the autism spectrum. The more I learn about autism, the more the diagnostic criteria fits. But I've always hated small talk. And this is apparently an autistic thing. I think it's also an artistic thing. I think artistic people would rather spend our time on creative conversation than wasting our time on the minutia of life that small talk tends to focus on and dwell on. But yeah, maybe if I'm brave enough, I'll ask, are you asking what's my passion, or are you asking how do I pay my rent? Because those are two different things. And in time, what I'm hoping is that by drawing a little bit every day, painting a little bit every day, sharing these kinds of draw with me videos once again, where I get on camera and share my drawing process, let you see how these abstract images unfold, line by line, dot by dot, colored area, and also the negative space, which I think is so important. Having interesting shapes that highlight the negative space. In time, maybe I'll be able to make that transition from professional artisan and hobby artist to just professional artist. That would be super cool. And so yeah, that said, if you like this drawing and would like to purchase a print of this drawing, I found a really great local copy shop that does high-end acid-free paper, archival quality printing. And yeah, I would be happy to have a print made. I can send you some prices. If you'd like, you can maybe email me or let me know in a comment, or even send me an Etsy message if you'd like to go through Etsy. And the cool thing about that, ordering a print or even ordering an original drawing, so I don't like to sell the originals that I've made for my personal collection, like the one I'm working on in this video, but I am totally open to doing custom order originals, and I've even created a new listing in my Etsy shop for something like a soul portrait work of art. So, okay, here's where I'm kind of merging being an artist with being a mystic, being an intuitive reader. So yeah, I had said earlier that there was a time in my life when my highest excitement revolved around giving tarot readings. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately because I had some really cool clients and some really cool experiences as a tarot reader. And yet I just can't really see myself doing it anymore because I find tarot cards to be a little bit limiting in the parameters of what a reading can be. It's like the 22 archetypal energies in the major arcana cards, as wonderful as they are, they're not all encompassing. They don't tell every single possibility for who a person can be, what a person may have gone through, what drives somebody in life. I mean, that is why I combine tarot cards with oracle cards. I find having multiple decks on the table, literally and figuratively, gives a deeper well to draw from. More energies, more explanations. I think I'll always keep my cards. I'll always do readings by request. But recently I came up with an idea that I've only tried twice in my life. But, now that I think of it, I was about to say I've only done once. And then I said twice because I suddenly remembered trying this with an ex way back when I lived in Vancouver in like 2007 or 2008. So yeah, I'll share that story in a moment. But yeah, first I'll tell you what the idea is, and then I'll tell you about the examples and the times when I've tried this idea. And so the idea is to do drawings or watercolor paintings while meditating on a specific individual and setting the intention that whatever comes through in the art, symbolically, representationally, unintentionally, because of course they are always spontaneous like this, that whatever comes through will be a representation of that individual. So maybe you've heard of soul portraits. This is a form of soul portrait. This abstract drawing whilst meditating on the individual. And yeah, I've tried it before. So once I did a soul portrait that was drawn like this, like a black and white drawing, for an ex who I was with for a few years back when we met when I was in high school. We didn't start dating really until after I graduated, and we lived together for a little while in Vancouver before I left him to pursue my spiritual path. And yeah, there was a day he was watching me draw. And it was shortly after I had been discovered by a local shop as a tarot reader. They had invited me to do tarot lessons for the customers of their store. Some people who owned a bookstore. I'll tell all this tarot stuff in a future video. I think it deserves its own video. My tarot journey and cool tarot reading experiences, stories. That'll get its own video. But for now, yeah, this ex was watching me draw on one of my days off, and he knew that I had recently started working as a tarot card reader, and I'd always been into tarot, but I was finally kind of doing it on a professional level. And he asked me, why don't I draw and turn that into a reading instead of using cards? And I asked him what that would even look like. Like, what do you mean, why don't I draw as a reading? Because drawings aren't the same. This is my way of meditating in a creative way. This is my way of turning off my conscious mind and just focusing on whatever imagery wants to come through and kind of being a vessel, allowing it to come through. So he said he just had this spontaneous idea that if I draw, allowing whatever wants to come through, but while focusing on an individual person, anything representational that emerges in the art will have a symbolic meaning to the person on whose energy I meditate while drawing. So for example, the spiral that came out in this drawing. If this were to come out in a personal reading drawing, we could give the interpretations for spiraling energy, growth, expansion, personal discovery, starting in a central point and then going to pursue multiple different areas of excitement. Anyway, I'm not going to give a reading based on this drawing because this one was truly just focusing on the art, on the picture. But anyway, I was intrigued enough by the suggestion that X gave me to do a little demo for him and said, okay, like let's try it right now. Let me meditate on you and see what wants to come through. And luckily, he was down. He was ready to be the guinea pig in that scenario. So, and by the way, I don't like to say somebody was the guinea pig because I do not purchase products that have been tested on animals. And so I use that expression and then I catch myself thinking, I'm not going to use that expression anymore. We'll say he was my first client for that kind of reading. My test demographic. Maybe that's a better word for it. That's human testing based. So yeah, I started drawing just like this, just like I do. And as I drew, I noticed some things come out. I'm not going to go into detail for the sake of his privacy. Some people might know who this X is, people who have been with me in this journey. And so out of respect to him, because some of it was really quite personal. But yeah, I started describing the ideas that were coming to me as I drew. And they came to me in a way very similar to how ideas come to me while I read tarot cards. Sometimes it's based on the card, and other times it's completely unrelated to the card. But the card is kind of like a catalyst, or what Bashar, that channeled extraterrestrial I mentioned earlier, calls a permission slip. So yeah, each and every one of us has intuition, has insight, has the skills of observation. Like every single person alive is capable of channeling wisdom, of gaining deeper insight than what's visibly available. And yet, a lot of the time, we ignore our intuition. We don't listen to our own psychic inner messages. We tune out that inner voice and call it wishful thinking or whatever. Some people might even hear their inner voice and think it's a mental illness if it's telling them something different from what day-to-day reality has to tell them. And so Bashar says that things like tarot cards, astrology, crystal gazing, etc., are permission slips. When an intuitive person is sitting staring at a crystal ball and a mystical revelation comes to them, they allow themselves to pursue contemplation of that mystical idea because the crystal ball gives them permission to do so in a way that can't be called crazy because it's a socially acceptable way to tune into that inner voice. And likewise, if a person is sitting with tarot cards, they'll allow themselves to get those ideas because the tarot cards or the astrology chart or, the notebook where they're doing some automatic writing, whatever it is, it gives them permission to get those ideas. So yeah, sitting with that X in Vancouver, it's like I shifted my permission slip from the pre-created, pre-designed, drawn by somebody else tarot card deck and brought it into the realm of my own art, my own drawing. And it was really cool. And it actually deepened our relationship because there were some things about him that I didn't really know or understand. And I took personally some of his behaviors that by doing the art reading, I understood were not meant to be hurtful. They were more like how he was coping with his own childhood trauma and how he dealt with life and how he saw existence. It was really, really cool. Probably my favorite day in that particular relationship. And more recently, I had the idea to do these on a professional level, the way I used to do tarot readings. So, yeah, I added a category to my Etsy shop where you can purchase either a full-size drawing similar in scale to the one I demonstrate in this video, or half size, which would be literally half of one of these exact pages out of this sketchbook, or a watercolor painting, the size of this drawing or half the size of this drawing. So yeah, either a black and white pen and ink drawing like this or a watercolor painting. And you can give some detail about what you want the art to be. Like, do you want it to be a soul portrait where I'm just completely open and free to contemplate on your name, your picture, the thought of who you are, and come to an idea, like a tarot reading style idea of what the universe wants to tell you about yourself. Yeah, either as a painting or as a drawing, watercolor painting or black and white drawing. So I was recently discussing this with one of my really good friends, and she asked if I could do a pet reading for her. It was a year ago that her beloved kitty crossed the rainbow bridge, as they say, and she just wanted to get a reading to check in on her beloved pet. So I did a watercolor painting. She requested watercolor painting half size, and it started out as all of my paintings do, completely abstract, completely spontaneous, non-representational. And once it was completed, I shared it with her in a picture, and she loved it. And I started telling her what I saw in the different symbols, what each one represented. And then I flipped the page over. And when we looked at it upside down, my friend gasped and said, "Oh my God, that's the beach where I planted flowers for her." So this friend lives in LA, and her kitty, she used to stop with her cat in a carrier at a local beach, and they would sit and watch the waves and just enjoy that nature space. So she had found a volunteer group in her area were kind of like reclaiming nature in the parking lot areas around local beaches, and replanting some of the native plants so that they could kind of regreen the space. And she thought that would be a beautiful way to honor the memory of her feline friend, was to plant some plants at their beach spot. And she showed me the partitions between the spots, the plants they had planted, the sun rising in the background, and also the water of the beach that had all come through unintentionally in that soul portrait of her kitty. And so, yeah, really cool things like that will happen sometimes when we do this kind of mystical art and when we make art without any set plan. Like, when anything can come through, the things that tend to come through are the things that are meant to be there. You know, if I had thought of this friend's kitty and the way they loved the beach together, if I had sat down and tried to paint a beach on purpose, it would have looked nothing like the beach that she had actually gone to. I would have probably done, a long stretch of sand and a lot of water and maybe some seashells and clouds and the sun in the sky. But I wouldn't have thought to make it a scene where it's like looking at the land from the water with a parking lot included. Like, who paints a beach and includes the parking lot? And yet the parking lot was the most significant aspect of that scene for her, because that was where she used to sit with her kitty, and that was where she planted the wild plants. So yeah, I think these are going to be super fun to do if you choose to commission one. I left a space in the Etsy listing to include your favorite colors, if there's any specific symbol or flow to the art that you really want included. Otherwise, we keep it completely open and spontaneous, and that can be even more fun. But yeah, I think that'll be a great way to be an artist without giving up the more mystical aspect of what I do. So instead of being a tarot reader, I can be an intuitive artist. And I mean, I already am, but dinner party, what do you do for a living question? It would be nice to be able to say, I make art and I give that art interesting interpretations for people and make them like soul portraits. So yeah, that's my latest excitement, Bashar style highest excitement that I'm pursuing. But I would love to hear in a comment, what is your highest excitement? What do you do? Not professionally, but passionately. What is your passion in life? Do you know what your passion is? And if not, how do you plan on finding out? That would also be interesting to know. So yeah, let me know what you think of this drawing. If you'd like to order a print or if you'd like to order one of the soul portraits, let me know. We do not have to go through Etsy. I can give you 10% off if you would rather just go through, I guess PayPal would be the way to do it. Because that way I'll be saving the Etsy fees. But otherwise, I do still quite love going through Etsy also. So yeah, let me know. I'll put a link to my Etsy shop in the video description. And I'll also put my email address if you'd like to go through, yeah, by email and through PayPal. And so the last thing that I'll say, if you do order one of these portraits, I will make a video of myself creating the art, and I will do a voiceover on the video just like on this one. And that voiceover will be your reading. And you also get the physical original artwork and the right to print it. So the right to, make it into your business card or make copies to give out to people. Like, it will be entirely owned by you. However, I will also continue to retain the right to reproduce it. For example, to share a picture of it on Instagram and Pinterest, or to include it in anthologies of my art. So I will also have a scanned copy that I keep, and I will have the right to do with that what I please. But you get the choice, of course, about whether you want the voiceover reading to be public or private. So if you want the voiceover aspect of your reading to be just for you, like if something in it is quite personal or you don't want anybody to know that you're the one who commissioned that artwork, we will keep it entirely private, and I will upload a video with maybe I'll make it a short. I'll do it at like hyper fast speed and just say creating a soul portrait for an anonymous client, something like that. So yeah, you get the choice whether to be public or private with it. Just like back when I did my tarot reading videos, sometimes people wanted to share it with others, sometimes they didn't. But yeah, I think that would be super fun. So thank you in advance if you choose to get one. But also thank you for listening to this whole entire video. It turned out to be a little bit longer than I've planned. I've spoken more than the drawing would have permitted. But I did do the drawing at double speed. If you're wondering how I drew it so quickly, that was twice as fast as I actually drew in real life. But yeah, let me know if you watched the whole thing. What's your favorite part of the image? What are you working on right now? And yeah, comments really help my videos get boosted in the algorithm. So hopefully I can start building up this channel once again. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe. It really does help. Hype the video if that's an option. That really helps too, I'm told. But anyway, in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I wish you all the best things in manifesting the life you most desire, the life of your highest excitement. And I thank you so much for being with me on this journey and helping me to do the same. Much love to you. Bye for now. Okay, so the last things I want to add in this video as a little bonus for those who stayed till the very end, this is the picture that turned out to look like a beach. So yeah, that's the sun in the top left corner, the parking lot area where you can see the dividers between each space. And yeah, my friend even saw splotches of paint by the places where she had planted wildflowers and native plants to the area. And then there's like a blue stripe followed by some swirly stuff over a purple background. And in that, we saw all kinds of really cool marine life and marine plants that she's always really adored. And that's like the water. So yeah, that in case you were wondering what it looked like when I described the painting that when we flipped it upside down, and this is it flipped upside down, which turned out to be right side up, was an accidental abstracted beach scene. So yeah, that's an example of a work that I made for somebody in watercolor style based on this art as a reading idea. And so yeah, thank you for staying till the end. Much love once again, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.